Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined by Andrew Erickson and by Jake Ciely. If you missed it, we just did an episode on must-draft wide receiver and tight end rookies. This is part 2 of that episode where we were talking about running back and quarterback rookies. It'll be the exact same show, just a couple of different positions. For those who might have missed the other episode, though, Jake, what do you have going on at The Athletic?
Yeah, and also, if you can tell the difference between the pictures, I did change one little slight thing. It might be very hard to tell, but you can play that guess the picture change thing. But over at The Athletic, I do have the write-ups for every pick that happened. If you want the short version of it, I did grades for every team. It's just a nice little paragraph blurb on every single team with redraft and dynasty grades. And then, of course, rankings for rookies and dynasty and redraft and everything. So just like Fantasy Pros, we got you all covered. Between the two of us, you should not be losing your leagues.
Definitely. For a reminder for everybody, all your 2025 consensus rankings and tiers that you're looking for can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. You can navigate to the rookies as well. We already did an intro on the other episode, so let's dive in here on the instant impact running backs and quarterbacks. They're kind of both going to be sprinkled out. We're not doing like a running back section, then a QB section, kind of just all sprinkled together throughout the episode. Erickson, who you got for your first instant impact guy?
Going to go with running back from Ohio State, Quinshon Judkins, drafted by the Cleveland Browns at the top of the second round. We all expected the Browns to invest into the running back position during the draft. Nick Chubb is going to be, he's still unsigned. He'll probably sign with another team later on in the offseason. But Jerome Ford, more of a complimentary back. And at the time, I thought, man, this is the perfect pairing with an explosive rusher like Jerome Ford, used more in the passing game, whereas Judkins can be that early down hammer for the Cleveland Browns as they get back to the basics with their 5-man rotation at quarterback. Well, let's just establish the run. Let's keep the offense simple with Kevin Stefanski. Let's run the ball with Quinshon Judkins. I think that he parallels a lot to like Nick Chubb. I know that they have talked about him like a Kareem Hunt. Either way, I'm fine with both of them, right? If he's Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, some type of in-between running back for the Cleveland Browns, like that's music to my ears. So I liked Judkins a lot coming out. Again, very productive at the college level at Ohio State, Ole Miss, 4,227 rushing yards from scrimmage, 50 touchdowns. And Dan Brugler from The Athletic, one of Jake's coworkers, actually noted this in The Beast. He didn't miss a game the past 3 seasons, and he had 1 fumble over the last 2 years. So he's durable. He can run the ball effectively in between the tackles. Maybe he's not the most explosive long breakaway speed runner, but that's why they have someone like a Jerome Ford to complement him. That's why they drafted someone like Dylan Sampson in the 4th round to complement Quinshon Judkins, because I think that he's going to be the one that's loaded up with carry. Like 225 carries, I think is well within his range of outcomes for year 1. The pass game usage, that's going to probably leave a little bit to be desired. I don't know if we're going to see a lot of it in year 1, but they're open to it. At least they talked about it in the presser. Like, hey, we want to get this guy the ball in as many different ways as possible. I think that's a little coaches kind of just saying whatever they want. But Andrew Berry, again, the GM of the Browns, like he views Judkins as their bell cow and the guy that can carry the load. So I expect that mostly be through carries, not necessarily targets and passes out of the backfield. But I'm just really excited about Judkins. And I think this is a really good spot for him to be an immediate producer.
For most people, there is a tier of the rookie running backs after those first 2, Genty and Marion Hampton, obviously. Who, by the way, Genty is the most instant impact running back. We're not mentioning him because, wait. Jake pointed this out when we were playing, but like extraordinarily obvious. Ashton Genty will be like a first-round pick in a lot of drafts. He's an instant impact guy. For the guys other than him, after those first 2 running backs, there is it feels like a tier in rookie drafts. Judkins is one of those names. Within that tier, Erickson, is he kind of at the top, or do you see him as fairly interchangeable with guys like Henderson, Harvey, Caleb Johnson, and some of these names we're going to be talking about later in the episode?
So I have him highest in that tier. So he's my preferred guy. So if I'm on the clock and Hampton's gone and obviously Genty's gone, like Judkins is the guy I want. Because when I'm looking at and I'm viewing him from a long-term perspective, like maybe year 1, he's not the complete profile. But when I'm looking at a guy who could potentially be a 3-down workhorse back on all downs, I think Judkins could be that guy. He's still super young. I know that he's a lot of touches on his body, but I think for a 4-year span, I think that a team is going to see him like, we're going to use this guy a lot. And this guy is built 220 pounds with explosive speed. He tested really, like the thing that was like great for his draft stock was the combine training. Like I think a lot of people were surprised, like, oh man, like this guy's jumping out of the building. Like he's running really fast for a guy at 220 plus pounds. And he's just a finisher, man. Like he just looks for contact at the end of his runs. And I think the Cleveland Browns are just going to love him. That's why they drafted him so highly in the 2nd round. So That's free for me, the 103 Judkins. And I just think that he's different from the other running backs they have. Like with Ford, with Sampson, those are guys who are more complimentary backs, where I think Judkins is clearly the guy they want to feature with the other guys sprinkled in.
Jake, let's just loop in your first pick here because it was Judkins' teammate in college. He was a guy who went just a couple picks, apart from Judkins in the actual NFL draft. TreVeyon Henderson. How do you see the differences between those two when you're evaluating guys who can make an early impact?
So I go Trey over Judkins, but they're back to back. You brought up tiers. I didn't do rookie tiers, but if I did, I would actually go 2, 2, and then 3. So my top 2 would be Ginty and Hampton, but my next 2 would be the teammates, would be Henderson and Judkins. I actually think Caleb Johnson is in on X tier with like a Skattebo and stuff like that. So I'm not that far off from Erickson. I just give the slight edge to Henderson. I actually, to one thing too, Erickson on this one, is I think he's a better pass catcher, that being Judkins, than people might give him credit for. I said Brian Robinson and Jordan Mason kind of in there. Like, he might catch 20, 25 balls. Like, it's not out of the equation completely. So I think that he can definitely be a bell cow. My difference here is that I see Trey Henderson as one of, if not the most explosive running backs. Like, my joke was that, you remember those little car shooters that Hot Wheels had where you pulled it back and that spring made that noise as you load it and just like, and then you just let it go and that car just flies out and cracks the window. Like, that's Henderson. He touches the ball. He's a flipping rocket and gone. And I think for what he can do with the ball in his hands, I'd rather take 15 to 18 touches of Henderson than 20 to 21 of Judkins. It's a very slim margin. Like, I'm talking, like, I have Henderson as 1.5. We've talked about on previous shows in this tier of his own just because I think he's so good. But the landing spots help a little bit too. Like, I would rather be on the Patriots at this point than on the Browns when if I'm talking about a running back, even with the bell cow workload. And if you look at the Patriots, even with what they've done coaching wise, is like, this is still, it feels to me like a Patriots running back in that explosiveness, passing game, dangerous, somebody that can be 15 to 18 and have their complement instead of being like the pass catcher we see in a lot of teams now. Is there's starting to be a shift in the NFL where it used to always be the power with a complementary pass catcher. We're seeing teams now kind of going with pass catcher, complementary power, and being that third down. So like, maybe he loses some touches on short yards and at the goal line, but I think he can do that too. And I drew the comparison. This is what I'll say. Worst case scenario, he does only get like 15, 16 per game. I think he's in the James Cook world, where what did James Cook just do? Top 10. Now, of course, that came with touchdown equity being on the Bills, and there is that little bit of risk with Henderson, but he doesn't need 300 touches. If 240, you told me Henderson was getting this year as a rookie, I do think he would be a top 20 running back. And to talk about redraft only, I legitimately go back to back. I have Henderson at 19 and Judkins as RB20, and I have him back to back in rookie only and in redraft.
Is that irrespective of the format, Jake, or in PPR would you have Henderson maybe even higher?
So I always default to half point PPR. If it was non, I'd probably flip them, and in full point PPR, you might get Henderson jumping a spot or two even higher.
Erickson, what do you think about that breakdown, like between the two former teammates?
Yeah, I mean, they're very different backs, and that's why they were so successful at Ohio State, right? Because you had Quinshon Judkins, early downs, and you had TreVeyon Henderson ripping off all these massive plays. To me, it reminded me a lot of Zeke and Tony Pollard. Like, that was my comp for TreVeyon Henderson, was Tony Pollard. Just like this uber explosive running back that can be used dynamic in the passing game. And as a person that watches the Patriots every single week the last couple of years, they've had no juice whatsoever to speak of. And the fact that what they did in the offseason was draft offensive linemen and bring in explosive playmakers. Well, yeah, I like the point that Jake brought up where I like Judkins because I feel more confident about his workload at the next level. But Jake is correct when saying Henderson doesn't need a heavy workload to get there, because I don't think the Patriots would be wise or smart to do that, because we saw Henderson get hurt a lot in college. Like, he missed a lot of time with injuries. So it would be malpractice to be like, we got to get this guy 20, 25 touches per game, because you're taking away what he does best. And that's being this explosive guy, especially in the passing game out of the backfield. So I've teetered. I think that they're kind of in the same tier for me. And it goes back to kind of like flavor, right? When you're looking at touch projections, I think Judkins will probably come out on top of TreVeyon Henderson. But you look at the situation where, I mean, if the Patriots offense goes inside the top 15, Drake May takes a step forward. I mean, TreVeyon Henderson is going to play a big role in that. So I definitely understand Jake's ranking of Henderson over Judkins, and I'd be happy to get either of them, honestly, in rookie drafts, which is why just draft running backs in your rookie drafts. Like, please,
Yeah.
this is who you want. This is what you want to do.
This feels like Gibbs and Bijan. You're going to be happy with both. Like, we're talking about RB potential top 5, 6, if like everything peaks, and then they're like back to back anyway. So
I think one too. You didn't bring this up, Jake, but Henderson pass pro, like that's one of the best things that he can do, and that's
he was one
immediate.
of the best in the class.
Yep. I know that the Colts GM actually came out and said, and the Colts didn't even draft TreVeyon Henderson, right? So it's very telling to me that a GM for a totally different team just talks about specifically a player that they had looked at and said, yeah, TreVeyon Henderson, his pass protection was one of the best we've ever seen from a rookie.
I forget what game it was with the dude, like where he just planted him. Like he didn't even move, and the DN just got planted. And I'm like, oh my God.
And
So
for all the teams for that type of guy to go to, the team that just had 0 offensive line last year. I mean,
that is the one concern. Like, what is the Patriots offensive line? Does it gel? Because yes, they added some pieces, but how long does it take for that to kind of work? What does the committee look like? Because Ramondre's still under contract, and again, I don't think he's going to go away in week 1. But again, if he fumbles in week 1, then yes, he's going to go away. Then he is going to go away.
To be fair, you brought up the Drake May thing too. If everybody's on like, oh, this team's breaking out, Drake May, top 10 quarterback, we like Kyle Williams, blah, 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 and all this type of stuff. We were drafting Ramondre Stevenson as a top 15 running back last year. Like that, like, let's be honest, like you should be more in on Henderson, assuming, like you said, like assuming that he is taking over and Stevenson's a non-factor.
Erickson, let's go to, since we've kind of hit on both your guys' first already together, let's go to your next instant impact running back.
Cam Skattebo for the New York Giants. And this is something I wanted to bring up because this is a stat that I love when we're talking about running backs that are used in the passing game. So running backs drafted on day 2 or earlier that have averaged at least 30 receiving yards per game in their final college seasons: Saquon Barkley, David Johnson, Joe Mixon, Antonio Gibson, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Rashad White, Zach Charbonnet, Jahmyr Gibbs, Omarion Hampton. And had he been drafted 3 spots earlier, Cam Skattebo would be in that list of players. And I was doing some galaxy brain thinking. If the Giants had traded their 4th round pick instead of their 3rd round pick to get back into the 1st round, they would have drafted Cam Skattebo in the 3rd round. So I think that he would be looked at so differently if he got drafted 3 spots ahead because, oh, he's a day 2 running back. Cam Skattebo, like we got to be wheels up, but day 3, like, oh man, what's the commitment? Round 4, Tyrone Tracy, he was a day 3 running back too. It's going to take one Tyrone Tracy fumble to get Cam Skattebo the bell cow work in New York. So, Jake, I know you followed the New York Giants very, very close, or at least I knew you did at one point.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Somebody finally has gotten it right. Like everybody's like, hey, you're Giants. I'm like, not a Giants fan. This has been like 6 years running.
So maybe you can't weigh in here, but I wanted to throw you a bone just in case. But I think that Tyrone Tracy is on super thin ice. I mean, he got benched last year, even though he showed out and took the job from Singletary. Cam Skattebo, I mean, this guy's a hammer. He can do it all. And I think that's not going to take long for him to take over and be a 3-down workhorse back in the Giants, even though he was a quote-unquote day 3 pick by, if we're being exact. I mean, he's essentially a guy that was picked at the end of the round 3. And I just think that that's something to layer on the context of when he was selected, because I think the Giants probably had a round 3 grade on him, and they just got lucky to take him in round 4.
So, yeah, I don't have a big difference. I know a lot of people did, but I don't have a big difference between Caleb Johnson and Cam Skattebo. I think that a lot of people had a big gap. I have them in the same tier, and I'm saying that to say positively about Skattebo and the fact that I feel like it's Najee Harris and Josh Jacobs. And the Najee Harrison, like, maybe it's the work that gets him there, but to your point, I think he's a better pass catcher than people realize, which is why I brought up Josh Jacobs and that potential workload. Now, of course, I don't think Tracy is going to be eliminated from the equation. But you look at Brian Daboll, you look at this offense, you look at his usage from past years and everything like that, and I immediately put Skattebo over Tracy in my rankings, and people are like, oh, look at Tracy, and he was just learning the position. I'm like, no, but also understand the offense, the head coach, the offensive scheme, the style. Skattebo's the lead. Skattebo is the lead, so much so that, like, I'm actually concerned that Tracy might not be anything more than an RB4, because you brought up something too. It's kind of similar to the Patriots' ways. Brian Daboll do not want you to fumble and lose the ball. This is go back to the Tiki Barber days. Like, this is the death knell. Like, Tracy was clearly their best running back last year. And as you said, Andrew, hit the bench because he fumbled and then fumbled again. Like, so I just think it's going to be Skattebo probably, I'd say 60% of the snaps, which is a great 1-2 punch with Tracy. But I think that Skattebo could be at least an RB3, if not push the RB2 tier, as in redraft.
That's interesting. Skattebo is somebody that like doing the Dynasty show. Scott Bogman is a huge fan of, and has been like
Just a
talking
little
about
bit.
Yeah, I mean What was the mock you were on, Jake? Didn't he take Skattebo like 7th
The
overall or
third running back
something?
off the
Yeah,
board,
I mean,
and like people lost their minds in the
Yes.
comments.
It was a lot. He's dialed that back a bit, given the landing spot, but as a player, Bogman was, and part of it is because he saw him kind of wreck his Longhorns in that game last season. Skattebo. I liked Tracy last year, so I am not torn. I mean, I do like Skattebo a lot, and I think it's telling that they went after him. But I'm really interested, I guess is the way I would put it, to see how that backfield kind of pans out this year.
But do you guys agree with what I was saying earlier? Where do you think he would be viewed differently if he just got taken at the end of round 3? Do you think that he would be talked about differently, like with closer, like how Jake has been closer to Caleb Johnson? That doesn't seem like it's consensus. But
No, and I was about to say something that sounds so disrespectful. I was legitimately about to say the words "two casuals," but because the people watching this show, it's actually a credit to the people watching the show. I don't think people watching this show would think of him differently. I think to the average fantasy player that doesn't watch this show in the offseason, that doesn't try to be as invested as the people watching, would be like, oh, well, he wasn't drafted till day 3. So I see your point. I agree, but I think it depends on how invested you are in fantasy.
I had the exact same basically conversation yesterday, Jake, taping again the Dynasty show. I mentioned how it might be a good idea to start trading for 2027 picks now because that class looks really good. Like Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, these guys are great freshman years. And Fitz was like, people already know. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I feel like the more casual player, Fitz was like, the people who are watching this show already know.
This show.
Like,
Yeah,
okay.
Well, you got to get ahead of, is Archie going to play 1 year or is he going to stay 2 years? Right. So is that the 2027
Awesome.
picks? Is the one-on-one more valuable in Superflex in that draft or is it next year?
The answer's sellers anyway, so there you go. So let's go.
Yeah. All right, Jake, one more instant impact guy. And this is a player that, talking about people who love these guys, Debro could not be higher on this player.
Which is crazy because like I did my redraft rankings and then he showed up under consensus and I'm like, wait, what? Like I thought, but it's RJ Harvey and I said he is going to be Sean Payton's new Alvin Kamara, and I said that with no, I'm not saying the number 1 running back in fantasy or even potentially a top 10 because the one thing about Sean Payton, and Sean Payton did this even with the Saints and Kamara, is having 4 active running backs on the day of the game and using 2 or 3. And I say that to say, it's another one to go back if people watch the wide receiver tight end show. And I said the thing with Gadsden is like, if we as the fantasy community, and I say people watching the show, us as the quote unquote experts, hate that word, but point being is like, if we're all in on somebody and love the draft spot and love where he landed and love the opportunity and the fit, sometimes these guys can get so much helium that by the time we get to August, if we're not only talking rookies, we're talking redraft, is that now they've priced themselves out and you bought all the risk. There is still risk here. There is still risk that Sean Payton doesn't give him goal line opportunities. There's still risk that he uses Estime and McLaughlin. However, I think that Harvey fits the best. I think Harvey is a perfect, like I said, Alvin Kamara for his Broncos team. And I think the upside is a solid mid RB2 where like his floor on a week-to-week basis is probably RB 30, 35 at worst. I don't think you're ever going to be super disappointed with the RJ Harvey game. And I think you could see some RB1 performances. All that being said, as I wouldn't go too crazy, is like right now I have him in that low 20s, high 30s, depending on your format. Obviously takes a little bit of a hit in non-PPR. But if he starts climbing into the world of James Cook and Alvin Kamara, then I might let's throttle back. If he passes TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins in drafts, let's throttle back. Like there is still risk here.
He has passed those guys in drafts.
Seriously?
In drafts with Debro.
Okay.
You got to pay the Debro tax on RJ Harvey.
Erickson, you and I were the estimates last year. Nobody was higher on Audric Estime than you and I were. Does he scare you off of RJ Harvey? And obviously, I know what the actual answer is.
No, he does not. I would say though, if I get RJ Harvey in my dynasty rookie draft and I pay the Debro tax to get him, I would just get Estime on your roster. Just pop him on there just in case, because like Jake said, it's a stable of running backs that the Broncos like to use. And even if RJ Harvey is the lead guy, the 1A, like he's still going to sprinkle in other players. We know that Harvey still has work to do again, as long as a lot of rookie running backs is in pass pro. And Estimates has a year under his belt. Jalen McLaughlin has obviously been there as well. these guys I don't think are just going to disappear entirely, whereas Harvey will be the featured player, and similar to a Henderson type player where he's explosive with the ball in his hands. Maybe he doesn't necessarily need 20 touches a game to get there. But going back to the overarching part, we're excited about this Broncos offense, right? Like, they didn't have that many pieces to fill when it came to, okay, running back, they can spend a second-round pick on a running back because most of their roster is already pretty good and ready to go. And if Bo Nix can take another step in year 2, well, then this is a team that we're excited about for fantasy football. And if RJ Harvey's at the center of that as Sean Payton's new Alvin Kamara, then I think that's something to be excited about. I would say, though, don't forget about some of the other pieces they added this year, like Evan Ingram. Like, don't forget about him. Like, this guy could catch 100 balls in this offense like he did with Jacksonville. So we don't know exactly who the Joker's going to be, and Sean Payton's going to probably say one thing, and we're going to see something else. I know he raved about Marvin Mims for every single week, and that didn't necessarily work out immediately. So I would say, to Jake's point, the helium with RJ Harvey, like where is he going to end up going, I think is something to kind of pay attention to. And to bring him up again, because he does such a great job covering the draft, Dane Brugler from The Athletic, one of Jake's coworkers, he referenced RJ Harvey was one of his favorite guys as well. And he said when he was talking in one of the recap podcasts that he can't wait to take RJ Harvey in round 12 of his fantasy draft. And I was like, Dane, like, sorry, man, but like,
No.
he's not going in round 12, buddy. Not
No
maybe
chance.
like 10 years, maybe like 10 or 20 years ago, like when we weren't invested nearly as much. But man, this guy's gonna be surging.
Love
way
you,
up
Dane,
the
but you spilled over into something that
So I just thought
maybe
that
we
was
should have a
funny.
show. We need to talk.
Yeah, have an episode where you just teach him what he needs to know about fantasy side of things. Yeah, no chance. What round?
That's
do you think
after he
will be
takes
in?
Genty in the 7th.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, what round do we think Harvey will be in?
Ooh,
I would
I mean,
say-
if we're going by consensus, I mean, he's already in the single digits. So I would say if the helium continues, I think you're gonna have to pay 5th, 6th round if this doesn't stop. Like, and that point, like, I'm probably still okay with the 6th. The 5th is gonna get like I was just looking while Andrew was talking, and I wanted to make sure I was right, but I went back and I looked, and there's Kamara games where it's 11 touches, 12 touches, 9 because the game script just completely went sideways. And I'm not saying that, like, again, that's still half those touches are receptions. So in a full point PPR, you're still talking about an RB3 floor. But there is what Andrew echoed was what I was saying is that there's risk that any given week you still might get somebody who gets kind of factored out a little bit more just because of the matchup or the game script. So I say 5th, 6th round is probably where we're going to settle in. And I'm okay with that. But I think if it climbs higher, then you should just pull away.
It is the best time to be a basketball fan. All the thrills and playoff drama. Done sitting on the sideline and ready to win some real cash. Check out Pick 6 from DraftKings. When it comes to basketball payouts, DraftKings Pick 6 posterizes the competition, including prize picks. When you hit all your picks, you'll score a higher minimum payout on Pick 6 than flex plays on prize picks. And best of all, you'll win even more cash if you outscore the competition. Track your picks for a shot at huge cash prizes. That's all there is to it. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. Don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6 and cash in your basketball knowledge. New players get 50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Basketball playoffs are here. Cash in with Pick 6 from DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code FANTASYPROS. That's code FANTASYPROS for new customers to play $5. Get 50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Erickson, who is your first on our section of dynasty holds and long-term investments?
So going to the quarterback position here, I'm going to go with Jalen Milroe, kind of take the low-hanging fruit here from the Seattle Seahawks, because I think that he is going to be a player that the Seahawks are going to end up playing at some points, especially this season. If you look at some of the post-game or post-draft pressers with the GM, with the head coach, they've already mentioned, oh yeah, when we get Jalen on the field, when he's going to go in the game. So they're already like putting it in their minds that, yeah, we're going to get this guy on the field because he's an uber athletic as a rusher, has a cannon of an arm. Again, the accuracy is something that we got to work on. But if we get Milroe starts, like he's going to be slotted in as a fantasy QB1 right away. He averaged over 75 rushing yards per game on nearly 12 carries per game at the college level. Monster fantasy football ceiling when it comes to the rushing, akin to guys like Jalen Hurts or Justin Fields. I also like that when you look at character, very high character prospect. That's something that I looked at when I was looking at real NFL draft coverage, where coaches, GMs raved about Jalen Milroe and his work habits. And I think that we've done this experiment before with Sam Darnold. Like, it's all fine and good when everything is perfect around him. And then the minute that things start to go south, like he goes south real quick. And I think there's a reason why the Seahawks wanted to invest in another quarterback like a Jalen Milroe. And what gets me excited about him, even in year one potentially, where we could see some flashes, is the new Seahawks offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak. Well, he was with the Saints last year when they were using Taysom Hill in a hybrid rushing role. Andrew Janico is the Seahawks' new quarterback coach. He was with the Bears with Justin Fields when he was in a similar rushing style quarterback. So I think that they're going to find ways to get him on the field even in year one. I know that the head coach actually threw out, like, Sam Darnold's going to play 90% of the snaps, which means Jalen Milroe will play the other 10%. And I think you're going to see those flashes every so often. Wildcat, throwing a deep pass downfield. And if there's an injury to Sam Darnold, Jalen Milroe's his value is going to absolutely skyrocket. So in Superflex drafts, I'm trying to circle him on my board to make sure I want to try to snag this guy because I think he's just going to accrue in value.
What was your evaluation of Jalen Milroe, Jake?
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces in there that I want to talk about and echo, and one of it being is I think the biggest fear is the Anthony Richardson fear because it's the rushing upside with the throwing problems, the decisions. But something that Andrew said is to go also to the interview process is there's a report afterwards that Milroe showed up to a lot of these meetings and pointed out his own flaws. And they were like, why are you doing this? And it's like, because if I came in and didn't do that, it does show that I don't want to learn. I'm paraphrasing. I don't want to learn. And then also that you don't know how to watch film because I know you're seeing it. And so that's a testament to how much he wants to improve. On the fantasy side of things, I think the rushing upside is even higher. I do think it's Lamar Jackson potential. I think the best case scenario is he has a Jaden Daniels kind of season that we just saw for a rookie. Now, I don't think that's his rookie season. I actually think that's his peak. And of course, that was a top 5 quarterback. But I'm saying that to say is I don't think he's ever going to be a 4,000-yard passer. I don't think he's ever going to be throwing 40 touchdowns, but throwing 3,000-ish, 20-something touchdowns, but rushing for 1,000 potentially. And the big thing about him is I think a lot of people bring in the Jalen Hurts, and I'm not saying Andrew was wrong to do this, but I think one thing that gets interesting with that is that that's the better comp for the rushing touchdown potential because he will run in more touchdowns than Lamar Jackson does. Now, maybe not 12, 15, but Lamar Jackson doesn't run in a lot of touchdowns. Jalen Milroe will. So I think that's why I have a potential top 10 quarterback to answer your question here. The risk is severe. I mean, we could be talking in 3 years and be like, hey, remember we were hoping Jalen Milroe would be a thing and he's not. We have to acknowledge that that's the risk, but that's also why he's in a situation where he doesn't have to start from day one. That's why he's also somebody to stash in Dynasty and Superflex. I would spend a first rounder on him. It would be a late first rounder, but I would take that chance unless there's a running back that happened to fall to me in the first round, similar to Andrew says. I'm just taking running backs this year. I agree. But he wouldn't be in that conversation. So I think that Milroe is worth the risk upside investment. Because like he just said, we talked about Malik Willis at times as being a QB1 in fantasy when he started just because of some of his rushing upside. Imagine Milroe, who could probably put up 60 a week on the ground. So I'm definitely in on this pick.
I said to Fitz yesterday that, if Milroe ends up starting and being successful, that he has a ceiling of like a top 3 rushing quarterback in the sport. And Fitz was like, it's higher than that. He was like that. You're selling him short by just saying top 3. He was basically like outside of Lamar. He was like, there's nobody who's going to be a better runner, and he might, like to your point, score even more touchdowns than Lamar the way they use him in Baltimore. All right, Jake, let's go to your dynasty hold long-term investment.
Yeah, I'm going to go to running back that you and I talked about when we were talking about some like sleepers and stuff like that in this draft class. And one that I was higher on than a lot of people at running back was Trevor Etienne. And I even said that, he doesn't have like blow you off the chart skills when it comes to speed and elusiveness. And it's not like he didn't test super high and everything like that. But I did think he could be a Devin Singletary type in the NFL. And the reason I bring that up is because, okay, Devin Singletary, again, same thing I said on that show at the time. It's not like we're falling all over each other trying to race to the podium to draft Devin Singletary in our fantasy leagues. But it's somebody who has provided RB2 value in the right scenario on the right team. There's Devin Singletary types across the league that are providing RB2 value. And the reason this interested me as a whole is because we know Jonathan Brooks is done for 2025. What if he's never the same? What if we're talking about Jonathan Brooks next year the way that we're talking about Javonte Williams right now? If somebody comes in the front door, what if Javonte Williams is the same thing that we see, and this is foretelling what we see now with Jonathan Brooks, and we just never know, and it's only Chuba Hubbard and Trevor Etienne, and then Chuba Hubbard misses time, or Chuba Hubbard's not a thing in 2 years. So it's definitely a stash, but I think that Etienne is worth stashing as a potential. Hey, it's just a lottery ticket, and he's only going to cost you probably round 3 is what my estimation would be right now in drafts. Rookie drafts. I mean,
yeah.
What was that, Worm?
So what do you think about Etienne?
So the only thing I don't love about the situation is the reverse. Whereas, what if Brooks does come back and they do want to try to give him another shot? And then you have, do they go back to Rico Dowdle? What if Rico Dowdle plays really well this year? Do they re-sign him? They have Chuba Hubbard as their main guy. So for me, with a lot of these running backs that kind of went in the ETN range, I'm trying to play a numbers game where it's like, all right, how many injuries do I need to have? Like, how many things need to hit for me to get this guy in the lineup? Because if ETN's the starting running back for the Carolina Panthers at any point, we're gonna want to play him in fantasy because that Carolina offensive line is a beast. Like, they're gonna be opening up massive holes for him to run in. But how many hits of this parlay? How many legs do I need to hit? And it seems like those are far too often, or maybe too many of them for me, compared to some of these other running backs that also went on day 3, where maybe there are less injuries that need to occur, and then to the Brooks thing where, well, they did invest a second round pick on him. Maybe they don't want to give up on him quite yet, but I'm not going to say no to really any of these running backs. Just throwing them on the back end.
No, but that is 2 shows in a row that you tore apart my stash.
Well, Erickson, I want to get to your next kind of running back that you want to, hold and stash.
See, that's the problem. I was too nice. I went deeper. I love both of his picks, and they're on like all my lists.
That is true. Jake did basically throw I didn't put Jalen Milroe because he's obvious, and then I just took Jalen Milroe.
and then the next one, I'm like, we've already talked about him on 17 shows, but like, go ahead. Like, it's also another really good one. So there, I'm being much more friendly than you are today.
Such a great guest, Jake. Love you. So my next guy is running back Jaydon Blue for the Dallas Cowboys. We know that Dallas has a relatively weak depth chart for running backs. Javonte Williams at the top, Miles Sanders, Jaydon Blue, who they drafted in the 4th round, and then the guy from Clemson that they drafted, I believe, in round 7. So Jaydon Blue, to me, I think that he is not a complete running back in terms of he has pass protection issues. He has a smaller build, 5'9", 196 pounds. He doesn't have a lot of carries on his resume. Ball security is an issue, but this guy is so explosive. Like, he has sub 4.4 wheels. He can catch balls out of the backfield. And if this Tyler offensive line that they're building in Dallas with all these Tylers up front are just building these massive holes for a guy with just speed to burn, he's going to have 80-yard touchdowns every week. Maybe not every week, but you can see the upside. And I know that he's gotten some comparisons to Devon Achane, where you're looking and saying, oh man, like, this guy could really pop. And that's why I want shares of Jaydon Blue in some of these rookie drafts, because I think that he can get his way onto the field as a pass catcher. We know CeeDee Lamb's going to see 1 billion targets in this offense. Well, who's behind him? Like, do they involve the running backs more in the passing game? We know that Blue can be a factor in the passing game. So even if he's not good in pass pro, well, if he's running wheel routes and angles and screens because of the speed that he can offer, well, he's going to pop for this offense. So Jaydon Blue for me. And I do want to say one thing. Cowboys coach Brian Schottenheimer talked about the 2 running backs that they drafted, so Jaydon Blue and Phil Maffa, and basically was asked, are either of these guys capable of being a starter? And he's like, yeah, I'd hope so, or else we wouldn't have drafted them. So I wouldn't put a cap on Jaydon Blue, because I think that he could take on a bigger role in this offense. Maybe it's not week 1. Maybe it does take some time, which is why he's more of a stash. But I would not surprise me at all if he pops in the second half of the season, just based on the explosiveness and the pass catching that he can offer.
I really like Blue a lot. In leagues where I need running back help, I'm thinking about like reaching a little just to make sure I get him once kind of those main better running backs are gone in those rookie drafts. I'm a big fan of his, and obviously there's opportunity in Dallas. Jake, what do you think about Blue?
Nobody's going to do it. I'm blue. Like, how many team names are we going to have like that, especially by people watching? And a little tease, it's probably the 3rd time over these 2 shows that I'm going to do it. But on the first part is that love Jaydon Blue. Actually drew a comparison to Tariq Cohen, which everybody remembers. Peak Tariq Cohen, top 20, not only overall, but in points per game. Now, of course, it might be short-lived. It might be only 2 years, and the other year being an RB3 value. But that's what Blue can bring, even not touching the ball 16 times a game. Maybe it's only 12 or 13, kind of in that Alvin Kamara, but with more explosiveness. That's the upside. The risk, of course, if this is full-blown committee, but I don't think any of us are that worried about Miles Sanders. But Javonte Williams is no guarantee. Like, Jaydon Blue could lead this backfield as a rookie. Like, the Javonte Williams still hasn't shown to be pre-injury Javonte Williams, which is why I brought him up previously. If this is Blue with Maffa and then Williams or even Sanders as the 3rd, like, that that's in play. There's a non-zero chance this backfield is Blue as the lead. There's risk here, and that's why I started with the other part of it. The caveat here is that this by far is the biggest fantasy world pre and post draft poster child. Like this is the guy in the draft that the entire fantasy community fell in love with. Everybody was talking about 3 months ago. Nobody was really like there was like little peeps here and there, but like it just came around. And that's the point I want to make, is that if somebody's going to take Jaydon Blue in the first round of your dynasty draft, let them. Like, I get it. Like, and this is what I said too, is like everybody loves, and when we talk about this, the next part where we're talking about the sleepers, like the end of year drafts and like, stockpiling these guys, is like, just remember, like, we fall in love with these players. We're not 100% right, but like, it's always fun when they hit. But the frequency of a fourth rounder in dynasty actually hitting is so super low that like, don't, be beholden to like, oh, I got to get this guy and I got to take Jaydon Blue in the first and I got to get one of the ones that Erickson brought up. I got to move him into the second round to make sure I get him. Like, just don't go crazy with it and ruin everything.
Yeah, to be clear, when I said I want to reach for Blue, I meant like back end of the second round, not,
right. That's
trading into the first
reasonable
or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Jake, you've got an extra name here because you wanted to include 3 in this section. So who are your 2 names for your dynasty?
Yeah, I'll toss them both out at the same time so we can talk about it and move on here. But one was Brashard Smith. These running backs are different. Brashard Smith falling to the Chiefs. This is another one. Isaiah Pacheco came back last year and didn't look like Isaiah Pacheco. Like the fact that Kareem Hunt was continuing to steal touches and actually look better at times. I don't know that we're guaranteeing that Pacheco is the lead. Now, he should probably still be, but the reason I bring up Brashard Smith is because pre-draft, I said he's like a lot like Theo Riddick. Well, what's another player like Theo Riddick? Oh, Jerick McKinnon. What did Jerick McKinnon just do with the Chiefs a few years ago? Provide RB3 value and even get goal line carries. So I want to put Brashard Smith out there as somebody that in the 3rd or 4th round in a running back heavy draft, don't overlook him on his landing spot. Same thing with Damien Martinez for the Seahawks. I think he's definitely more of a 2026 guy because, let's know this, Kenneth Walker's a free agent. And I think at this point and the cost involved with a running back, especially one that's been hurt as frequently as Walker, I don't know if the Seahawks are just like, see what you can go get elsewhere, because now you turn to Charbonnet and Damien Martinez, which I thought the funny thing about Martinez is my comparison for him was Chris Carson. Oh, look, where did he end up? On the Seahawks. And you see what Chris Carson can do is providing like that RB2 value. So I think both of them are really intriguing ones that kind of got buried, but I don't think they're as buried as people might think.
Erickson, who do you like better between the 2, Brashard Smith, Damien Martinez?
I'm always a sucker for Chiefs running backs. I don't know what it is about it. It just, especially guys that go in 7th round, right? So the Chiefs have been always open to, hey, if you can play, you'll play. I think that maybe this year Brashard Smith has maybe a clearer path, but to Jake's point, Damien Martinez could be the second running back for the Seahawks as close as 2026. And I think he fell because of medicals. Like, he wasn't viewed as like a 7th round draft pick from a lot of the stuff I was consuming. It seemed like he was going to go much earlier, but he did fall to the 7th round. So I think that's knocked his draft stock. But I'm drafting these guys over most of the rookie receivers. So I'd be happy to have both on my roster for my rookie teams.
You can join our Fantasy Pros Discord community, chat with other fans, and get access to exclusive AMAs that wind up on our podcast feed. Here's what our current schedule looks like. Myself and Fitz at 5 Eastern on Tuesday, May 13th. And then Bogman and Fitz at 5 Eastern on the 3rd Tuesday of every month. Come get your questions answered and be on the show at fantasypros.com/chat. Erickson, we're moving to our late round sleepers and deep league stashes. I will tell you right now that your first pick here is one of my favorite picks that anybody picked for any not that he's my favorite player we're talking about, but one of my favorite, fits that's applicable to the section we're talking about them in. So I'm a big fan of yours.
I am leaving every single rookie dynasty draft with Kyle Monangai for Rutgers, Chicago Bears. I want this guy on every single one of my dynasty teams. Back-to-back seasons with 1,200 plus rushing yards, top 10 PFF rushing grade 2023, 5'8", 211 pound bowling ball running back. He does all the right things. He does the little things that coaches love. Ball security, 0 career fumbles. He's dependable as a workhorse. He gets the yards that are blocked for him, picks up extra yards. And we've seen this story before with Ben Johnson and DeAndre Swift. Like, we've seen Ben Johnson sour on this exact same running back times before. Swift was phased out of the Lions offense in Johnson's first year as the OC, and then he got traded the year after. So I don't think it's crazy to think that Monangai will be a player that the Bears turn to when we're looking at our teams, like, oh, who was a league winner in 2025 fantasy drafts because he took over the starting backfield, that's this guy for me. This running back from Rutgers that's playing on the Chicago Bears. I don't know how this new regime feels about Roschon Johnson. I don't really know how they feel about DeAndre Swift. Yes, you would think that they like him because they waited till round 7 to draft a player, but DeAndre Swift has had starting roles before and he's given them up. And I just think that this particular player does so much right that coaches love that he's going to get an opportunity. And when he gets that opportunity, he's not going to let it slip through his hands. So that's for me, my guy.
What round are you taking him in rookie drafts?
I mean, I would take him in the 3rd, honestly. Again, I don't want to take wide receivers in that range because they're going to sit on my roster, they're going to clog it up, and I'm going to have no idea what to do with them. Whereas Monangai, I can take him, and then when the Bears decide to draft running back next year, then I'll just get rid of him, and it'll be over, and it'll be done, and that's fine with me. But for this particular year, I think that he can add a lot of value. So, and one thing I also want to point out, so the Bears hired Eric Bieniemy, who has a perfect hit record of 7th-round running backs drafted from Rutgers. Okay, so he's the new running backs coach for the Bears. So we're 1 for 1. It's going to be 2 for 2.
Jake, what do you think about Monangai?
How fast he says his last name, I keep thinking Manana. Like, so anyway, I'm just off on a tangent today. I actually do like it. Like I drew some comparisons to Zach Moss, which Zach Moss, when been given an opportunity, I think the thing with Zach Moss is that might sound like a negative, but that comes more from, I think, his perception got overblown a lot of times, especially with the broken tackles and all that type of stuff. But on the good side of Zach Moss, he can be an RB2/3. And I thought what Andrew brought up is really important here is that it's not like Swift can be a winner, but also let's caution ourselves at the same time. And the fact that even if he's a winner, he's still time sharing with somebody for Ben Johnson. Like somebody is going to share the rock. And I think this draft pick was more concerning for me for Roschon Johnson. I actually think this might be Roschon's death knell, is that now he's the 3rd on the depth chart. And Monangai is the kind of time sharing that David Montgomery role. Now, will they be as good as Gibbs and Montgomery? Probably not, because if I did a pecking order, I would still take both of them over both Bears running backs. But it is worth watching, and then you get that kind of value, which is lesser David Montgomery. Well, you're talking about an RB3/4. And if anything happens to Swift, Monangai starts, like David Montgomery did, steps into the lead role, and you get RB2 value.
All right, Jake, we've got 3 names left here. Who do you have for your first late round sleeper?
So it's kind of similar in style here, is because we're going to a team with a new head coach and drafted a lot of players that you're like, ooh, this is getting interesting. And running backs. I'm going to go to LeQuint Allen, mostly because it's funny that I compared him to Rachaad White, but not like remember where Cohen came from. This isn't the bad Rachaad White. Like I said, this is actually like good Rachaad White. Like especially, I said, more effective on a per touch basis. So maybe Austin Eckler, but that ceiling was so high that I didn't want to call him Austin Eckler because he's not. But in that mold of that pass catcher, dynamic with the ball, like I said, more effective on a per touch basis than Rachaad White is. But if you put him in this timeshare role where Cohen comes in, and I think everybody's on notice, Etienne down the list here, is that this running back backfield could be a cluster, and we're just banging our heads against the wall. Maybe 2025 is like, just stay away. Just let it sort itself out. Don't invest on Etienne. Don't invest on the veterans. Take a stab. Dynasty, remember the name Allen if something happens later in the year, but maybe for 2026 and beyond, because this is what we're talking about, is 3rd, 4th, even 5th round picks in Dynasty, is that Allen's a stash away because he is somebody that was drafted by the current regime, and we also have expiring contracts next year on this backfield. So I think Allen's an interesting name where it could be like, oh my God, this 4th round pick turned it. This is one of the ones that you hit on that you're super excited about for next year.
Erickson, any thoughts on Allen?
It's Bashal Tootin season in Jacksonville. It's happening.
I just got in rookie draft.
I am legitimately, I think, the lowest person on Tootin.
Oh,
I think
dude.
He's super fast, but I think he's just a super fast guy. Like I just think he's a guy. I think it's put it this way, if his athleticism was 20% less, I don't think, because of his actual football skills, I don't think match his athleticism. Does that make the go back to like a Devery Henderson? Like I think the IQ and his ability just don't match how good he is as an explosive player.
Okay. I love him. I'm sorry. As the one guy,
it's fair. I'm not 100% right. Let me make that clear. But like, it's funny. We just talked about him. I actually drew some comparisons, and I called him the bad version of DeAndre Swift. Like he's bad DeAndre Swift, which is like he should be better. Like I think he should be better, and people are probably yelling at me right now from their home. Like I said, he's got one of the best top gears, but I just have concerns, and maybe I'm wrong on this one.
I fell in love with the person for Brashard because he was one of the guys at the combine that gave me, he actually took my questions, so I felt like he actually cared about what I had to say. And
You're falling into the trap, Erickson.
I'm cheering for him, dude. I
Hey, that's how I fell in love with Travis Fulgham. And went to ODU and we sat there at the combine and talked for 10 minutes. So like you always be careful about these things.
It's like because anytime anyone asks me about Tootin, I'm like, my rankings say this, but my heart says Tugboat. So sorry.
One name left for each of you. Erickson, who you got?
Jacory Croskey-Merritt for the Washington Commanders. So they took him in the 7th round of the NFL draft, 5'10", 206 pounds. I want to note that the Commanders' top running backs, Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, Chris Rodriguez, they all played last year, significant snaps, and they're all free agents in 2026. So Croskey-Merritt fell in the draft because he didn't go to the combine because he didn't play this year. He played one game this year for Arizona because he had eligibility limitations because of when he played since 2000. He's been in college since 2019. But in 2023, he was PFF's 4th highest graded running back at New Mexico. And then he transferred to Arizona and basically didn't play. But I think that this player would have gone way earlier had he just been able to play this year. Like that's really what hurt his draft stock because he didn't get to go to the combine. He just at the pro day. When I watched him, he reminded me a lot of Aaron Jones. And I think that he can be a really dynamic rusher for an offense that we're excited about with the Washington Commanders. And there's just no long-term commitment with guys like Robinson or Eckler or Chris Rodriguez. And we saw this backfield last year. They were turning to everybody to take snaps when guys got hurt. So I don't think, one injury here, one injury there. I think Croskey-Merritt could see a role in this offense. And again, he'll get replaced probably in 2026, but for a last pick stash of someone that maybe could produce for you if he gets into the lineup, I think that he would produce because I just feel like he's way better than a 7th round pick, especially with what we saw from him in 2023.
Jake, who's the last player you want to talk about?
Very similar in style of what we're talking about right now between Tootin, Croskey-Merritt, and then my guy Marcus Yarns. I think maybe that's my thing with Tootin. I think that Yarns and Tootin are kind of felt similar to me in that their explosiveness, their similar concerns. I will say that Yarns, similar to Tootin, they sometimes don't make enough people miss. More so Yarns than Tootin, let me be fair. But I think Yarns falls into a situation with the Saints that like undrafted, so of course he might not even be on the roster. But what does he do? He profiles to what they need on the team, similar to Alvin Kamara, who is missing time at this point, where like that role is not going to be filled by the other running backs on this team, especially Kendra Miller. So I look at Yarns and say, okay, fills a role on a team where they love this kind of opportunity with this burstness. Actually, I told you all my smash ups. This is my off the wall. This is how drunk I was. My Bursty McThird Downer. I didn't even give him a name. I just called him Bursty McThird Downer. And I just love that in Yarns. And I think that what he can bring here is, again, we're only talking about RB3 value, but in a full and half point PPR, that RB3 value is warranted to be on rosters.
Erickson, quick thoughts on Yarns?
Yards was one of my favorite sleepers, and I was very sad that he went undrafted. But the fact that he's on the Saints, they took Devin Neal in round 6. I think it's open for competition, right?
Yeah.
We don't know how this regime feels about Kendra Miller. It hasn't been good, so I wouldn't be optimistic about him. We know Kamara is going to be the main guy, but who steps up behind him? It would not surprise me if Yards could usurp Devin Neal, who, again, he was a round 6 pick. So the difference between him and Yards I don't think is too drastic. So I'm on the Yarns side here, especially because he's going to be free in drafts.
All right, we'll get out of here on that. If you missed our same episode like this, but for wide receivers and tight ends, be sure to check that out on your feeds or on YouTube as well. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to both episodes this week. One last reminder that we did tape these a couple days early, just in case any news came out that changed anything.
Travis Hunter will never play wide receiver.
Yeah, that's the example I use. I'm like, that's a dark one.
Keenan Allen signed somewhere. Watch.
Yeah. For Jake Ciely and Andrew Erickson, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We will see you again next time.